So how do we know when a Pokemon card will skyrocket in value before it actually does? Especially when they are so heavily produced, how do you spot what's going to be a winner? In fact, during 2022 to 2023, the most Pokemon cards ever in history were printed with a total of 9.7 billion Pokemon cards produced. Just let that sink in. Now guys, I have been collecting trading cards for over 20 years. I opened my first Pokemon pack in 1999, and then I went on to collecting and playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout my childhood and teenage and even adult years. I've been actively playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Since 2002, when I got the first starter deck Yu-Gi, and that was the first product I ever opened. I'm like a proper Pokemon and Yu-Gi boomer. I have been involved in every era and release of Pokemon. Trading cards and collectibles are one of my favorite hobbies, and honestly, it's been for such a long time. It just reminds me of simpler times. Over the years, I have refined my skills in what makes certain cards perform well and what makes people nostalgic for certain eras, and also what makes certain Pokemon stand out. You know, just having a nice, clean, shiny, holographic Pokemon card won't cut it. There needs to be more to make a card valuable. This is through, I've learned this through a lot of failures and learning from them along the way, with decades being immersed within trading cards and collectibles. What makes cards succeed comes down to a combination of things, but really the most notable aspect is how much demand will this product or this card have 20 years down the line. There's really nothing more to it. If you want to know how or which specific Pokemon usually perform well as an investment in the long term, I did make a video regarding that topic, which I'll link right here for you. Feel free to watch that video if that topic interests you. But now in terms of the 10 Pokemon cards that could potentially skyrocket in the future, here they are. Now, starting out at number 10, it's the Gold Metal Mew promo card from the Pokemon 151 Ultra Premium Collection. Mew is an OG mythical that really set the standard for how rare Pokemon could be. Anyone who played Pokemon during the red, blue, and yellow era knows exactly how rare Mew was. It was literally unobtainable. The same goes with Celebi, but Mew was literally impossible to obtain. This had always had a lasting imprint on older fans, and they always saw Mew as this incredibly rare, unobtainable Pokemon. Combine that with the fact that it is a gold rare, along with the fact that it's a metal card, with only a few of these metal cards really in existence at the moment, it leaves a real unique opportunity for an investment potential. Right now, the 151 Ultra Premium collections are super abundant and they're pretty easy to score, but like all good things, guys, supply one day will eventually run out. Now, Pokemon 151 was an enormous success, and you can even just see that in the Google Trends chart I've just put on here for how much search volume Pokemon 151 has over other sets during the same era. Now, this means a lot of younger generations would have opened this product, including the UPC, and this means a lot of kids for Christmas would have probably got the UPC as a present, and it would have created some amazing memories for them. Now, the gold promo is a nice touch, and it makes it real memorable, and it makes it a real great collectible. Currently, it's incredibly affordable, and it could really see some nice growth in the future. Now, pair that with the fact that PSA only recently started grading these metal cards, so you may be in for a treat. Don't forget, these metal cards are also subject to rust and damage, so if you can score these in PSA 10 and preserve them before any of that damage comes about, you may have a market looking for these metal cards in pristine condition in the future. And you might even get collectors who want to collect every metal card. For that reason, I think it's a really good pick. Now, number 9, it is the trio of Flareon, Vaporeon, and Jolteon VMAX Full Arts. These evolutions literally have just stayed in the shadows. They didn't get their time in the sun, and that's obviously because Evolving Skies literally had Umbreon, Sylveon, and Glaceon take all the spotlight with their alt arts, along with the fact that Espeon got a full alt art in Fusion Strike. These 3 evolutions never got the praise they deserved, which is actually kind of ironic as these are the original evolutions. Admittedly, they were abundantly easier to acquire than the others, and they weren't difficult at all to find. But EV collectors will want to complete the evolution sets in the future, and whether they like it or not, these 3 are still part of that puzzle. I mean, just for Flareon, look at the price difference between the English Flareon in PSA 10 versus the Japanese counterpart. I mean, that's just an incredible price difference. Even though the English is much easier to obtain, it still doesn't take away just how loved evolutions are, and the data and the history never lie. Evolutions perform incredibly well in the long term. These in PSA 10 will be great to have in a collection, and they are all part of the iconic Sword and Shield era, which kind of relit the flame and started it all. Now, number 8 is Blaziken VMAX Alt Art. You know, this card is a lot less loved than the other VMAX Alt Arts within Sword and Shield. And you know, the real cool thing about this is actually the chase card of Chilling Reign. Not only that, but this is one of the hardest cards to pull in Pokemon. When looking at the other VMAX cards, they've had way higher rises in terms of price. The reason why I love this Blaziken so much is just how unique the artwork is. They combine the ice theme of Chilling Reign and mixed it perfectly with a fire type. It's kind of a little bit comical that a fire fighting type is the chase card of an ice themed set, seeing as ice is actually weak to both fire and fighting. So something tells me this was intentional by them. But no, in all seriousness, this is an incredible artwork that really packaged Chilling Reign nicely, and it was the perfect cherry on top. I think when comparing it to other Sword and Shield chase cards, it's still priced pretty fairly, and it could see some decent growth in the future years. Chilling Reign also has become much harder to acquire, and it's slowly but surely beginning to rise. So this could really have a unique future, seeing as Chilling Reign is starting to become a very loved set. Now, number 7 on the list, it is Glaceon and Leafeon VSTAR Full Arts from Crown Zenith. I mean, guys, we all know, I just mentioned it, the power of evolutions. Now, the beauty of Crown Zenith is that it had really generous pull rates, and this was a great decision by Pokemon, as it was almost like a celebration to the end of Generation 8, and they wanted to end it with a bang, which I really loved about it. I speak super highly about Crown Zenith, and I made a video about the top 5 Pokemon investments currently, and spoiler alert, Crown Zenith makes the list. You can see my explanation there why Crown Zenith is such an awesome set. But guys, just like the other evolutions in this video, these are priced incredibly well. Right now, as of making this video, the Leafeon is like 18 US and the Glaceon is around 17 US. These are great prices for evolution full arts. When investing, it's a fine art of not overpaying and also trying to see when the right time to buy is. I personally love buying singles 1 year out from release, and I know it's not really the most enjoyable or the best time to buy if you're a collector, because they kind of seem they've aged without having the nostalgia, attachment towards them. But by then, the data always shows that it's the best time to get singles and you'll get the best price for them. These evolutions are definitely great artworks and they really nail it as a collectible. Now, number 6 on the list, it is Alakazam EX from Fates Collide, the PSA 10 copy in particular. Now, this one as a raw copy, it's pretty affordable. You can get it for like 30 to 35 US. Compare that to the PSA 10 copy, it's sitting at around 510 USD. If you're investing in cards printed from over 5 or 6 years ago, I would always go with PSA copies so you can be aware of the quality of the card. It can be very difficult to judge through a camera photo or just through an eBay listing. Now, in terms of this card, the reason why I'm such a big fan of it is that it contains 3 ace Pokemon on the card artwork with Alakazam as the forefront. You have Umbreon and Lugia also packaged inside the one frame. Now, not only that, it has a ridiculously low pop report. The PSA 10 copy is currently sitting at 400 copies. This is a real gem, and given how low the pop report is, it makes for an excellent investment. Some of the modern cards of today have very high pop reports. And although they may have high pop reports, but they also have a lot of demand for them. Now, whereas these older versions of cards are sitting on super low population reports, even though they are easier to pull. So this makes for an interesting opportunity and one where we could see some unique scenarios appear. But given that there's 3 ace Pokemon in the card and the pop report is so low, this one's a great pick. Now, number 5 on the list is the Iron Valiant EX Special Illustration Rare. Now guys, Iron Valiant, which is the Paradox recreation of Gallade, is a popular Pokemon. In fact, Gallade is known to be one of the most popular Pokemon in the world, and with good reason. It has an incredible design. So Iron Valiant obviously takes Gallade's best qualities and doubles down on them. Now, Iron Valiant really brings out the best aspects of this Pokemon in a very unique way. When handling such a loved Pokemon, it's important to give it justice when it comes to the card's artwork. And Iron Valiant really nails this. The artwork is sensational and it's pretty universally loved. Something like Lugia V is more disputed between fans, as some people adore the artwork and how it comes across as a wild sea monster, and others don't like the design. Iron Valiant doesn't really get too many complaints from a design perspective, seeing as it's such a great artwork. The neon colors really blend well together, and the turquoise and hot pinks blend perfectly on this card. I also love how it's the centerpiece with the other Pokemon filling it in the space around the card. It really gives it a heroic and cinematic composition. For this reason, I think this card could see some great growth in the future, seeing as it's such a staple from Generation 9. And Paradox Pokemon are kind of Generation 9's signature gimmick, along with the Terastallized phenomenon. And people will become nostalgic for this as time goes on. So definitely keep your eyes out for this great card. Now, number 4 is Rainbow Rare cards. Now, Rainbow Rare cards were debated by some, and a lot of people had conflicting things to say about them. Now, I have been pretty open, and I'm openly admitting that I am a massive fan of rainbow arts, and I explain that a lot in my videos. If you haven't heard me say it, I'll say it again. I got my daughter into Pokemon collecting last year when she was only 4 years old, and she constantly asks to see the rainbow Pokemon cards. I have made her a little rainbow rare binder for her to have later in life because I can see how much she loves them. I love how I can see the same excitement on her face that I had as a kid when I had my Pokemon cards back in 1999. So to me, the rainbow rares actually hold a special place for me. Now, I also did criticize some rainbow rares where I actually spoke about how some of them are ridiculously overvalued. And you can see that in my video where I cover the biggest 9 ripoffs in Pokemon at the moment, and I'll link that video here if that topic interests you. But in terms of them as investments, there's a ton of rainbow rare Pokemon cards that can be bought for under $15. And given their ridiculously difficult pull rates, they could see some awesome growth, especially as they are discontinued. I think it'll be super interesting to see 15 to 20 years from now if people become nostalgic for rainbow rares, and at the moment it's way too early to tell and no one really misses them at the moment. They're kind of well and truly, yep, what's the next thing? But they may become an iconic symbol for the Generation 7 and 8 eras. Not only that, but no one has ever really complained about pulling a rainbow rare. They made pack opening experiences so much fun, and that's something we can't overlook when thinking of investments. How does nostalgia work? We all know it goes back to the feelings that we had when we did something in the past. So definitely keep an eye out for your cheap rainbow rare cards at the moment. Now, number 3, it's one of my favorite cards, but it is the tag team Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia GX from Cosmic Eclipse, particularly the PSA 10 copy. Now, while this card is already incredibly expensive, there is something very unique about its position in the market. Cosmic Eclipse is one of the most expensive modern booster boxes, which is currently sitting at around $850 US. Which, seeing as how Evolving Skies is rising, and this was released 2 years before Evolving Skies, I can't see Cosmic Eclipse also not growing. However, we'll just need to wait and see. But the tag team Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia card is super interesting. This card is currently valued at $450 USD at PSA 10. Now, yes, I agree, that is a lot of money. There's no doubt about it. But check out the population report of this card. As of making this video, it has a pop report of 813 copies in PSA 10. Now, right now, the Giratina V is valued at $580 USD in PSA 10 and has a pop report of 3,800. And the Umbreon VMAX is valued at $950 and has a pop report of over 10,000 in PSA 10. So something's not giving here. This card seems to be a hidden gem in plain sight. And yes, I agree, $450 is still very expensive, but when comparing it to Sword and Shield chase cards, it really isn't that much, considering the pop report. In fact, I'd say this card is incredibly undervalued when looking at the circumstances. This card is seriously a hidden gem in plain sight, and one could argue that it could have enormous growth, especially if the market catches on. So for sure, this is a real fan favorite card and one that I'm really looking out for at the moment. Now, number 2 is the shiny Gardevoir from Paldean Fates. Man, this card started 2024 out with a bang. And honestly, this, along with the Charizard, deserve a spot on the list, but this Gardevoir takes the cake. Now, there's a specific reason why this card may have such a prosperous future, and it goes into learning which Pokemon people love. Now, in 2019, Reddit did a huge survey and they attempted to bring in every Pokemon fan across the forum to vote on their favorite Pokemon, and it got a lot of votes. Now, ranking at number 8 on the list was Gardevoir, which to me was actually kind of surprising. I mean, it even overtook Sylveon, it overtook Espeon, Tyranitar, and others which I thought would have been fan favorites. But regardless of all that, I love Gardevoir, but I didn't know the sentiment was so shared across the board. So this goes to show just how much of a fan favorite this Pokemon is. But what makes this card stand out is the artwork. Like, man, what are Pokemon doing to get such creative artworks created? This is sensational and arguably one of the greatest uses of colors mixed into a Pokemon artwork I have ever seen. The blue and green color scheme that was executed here was done so well, and this is one of those cards that will make anyone stop and take a second look. I'm a big fan of Generation 9 and their artworks, and sometimes with so many good illustration rares, the special illustration rares don't even have that much of a wow effect because we're so exposed to fantastic art. But this card is, it's beautiful, an absolutely beautiful artwork. It is currently my favorite card of 2024, and we are still in early days, but this really just showcases how good Pokemon are at what they do, so hats off to them for nailing this artwork. And an added bonus that this is a shiny variation of Gardevoir. And you have a real winner here. I think it's a really good pick. Now, number 1 on the list for cards that could skyrocket are Mega Evolution Full Arts. Mega Evolution Pokemon were one of the cornerstones of an enormous shift for Pokemon as a video game and series. They are actually very unique and are a special moment for the franchise. Let me explain why. When Generation 5 released, the idea was for Pokemon to have a soft reboot, as Generation 5 actually had the most Pokemon introduced in any generation. They wanted to pretty much recreate Generation 1 for new fans. Now, while Black and White were amazing video games, they didn't really achieve their vision of restarting the franchise, as people were still hanging on to the older Pokemon more than the new ones that were introduced. So Pokemon did what Pokemon do best, and they pivoted. And with the new 3DS handheld, they decided to introduce Mega Evolutions in Gen 6, which kind of doubled down on everyone's favorite Pokemon in the past, and they gave them essentially a 4th evolution. Well, for some Pokemon anyway. Now, when it released, it was a little debated amongst fans, but as the years have went on, it's a pretty shared opinion that Megas were an amazing addition to the franchise. Now, the TCG on the other hand, Megas got done dirty. The Mega card artworks were kind of bad. For some of the coolest Pokemon of all time, the Megas got covered with a lot of text and they had this weird look about them. They didn't really capture the Mega Evolution's raw power. I felt like the Mega Evolution cards felt a little bit comical and a little bit amateur. But, times are changing, and now with Pokemon Legends ZA underway and millions of fans that are about to experience Mega Evolutions again, these Mega cards could be seen as nostalgic treasures from the past. Just like in 2003 when Skyrocket was released and it was overlooked, I feel Mega Evolution Full Arts will have a similar vibe. The fact is that no one really loved the card artworks back then, and I admit there is a lot to be left desired with these, but in saying that, they are glued to an era and they are iconic in their own way. Yes, they could have been better, sure, I agree, but the reality is that these were the cards that we were dealt. Mind the pun on that one. Mega Evolution Full Arts are sitting at some of the lowest pop reports I've seen. The Mega cards are actually pretty scarce in good quality, and after Legends EA becomes released and millions of fans resurge, we could see some interesting things happen with these cards. The new Pokemon Legends games are bringing back millions of fans into certain era, and it really makes you wonder. We talk a lot about trading cards as investments, but what about the Pokemon video games? Is there a unique investment opportunity with current Pokemon video games? The answer to that is in this video, which I'll link for you right now, and it goes into detail between the digital and physical divide, and I cover some detailed sales data which compares previous Pokemon video games to the Pokemon trading cards during their respective eras. I'll see you there.